The fire cracked softly under the alien night sky. Strange stars glittered above, brighter and sharper than any sky on Earth. The human traveler sat near his small tent, his back against a rock, watching the flames dance. Around him the wilderness was alive with quiet sounds, wind brushing through glowing plants, and the distant call of unknown creatures. He pulled his jacket tighter around his shoulders. The desert air had grown cold after the twin suns disappeared behind the mountains. His breath made small clouds in the night, vanishing quickly in the icy wind. He had been walking for days, surviving on little food and less water. Now, this fire was his only comfort. But he was not alone. From the edge of the darkness, he felt eyes watching him. He turned slowly, his hand resting on the old rifle beside him. At first he saw nothing but shadows moving between the rocks. Then the faint glow of something caught his eye. A figure, crouched low, half hidden behind the strange tall grass. It was a girl. Her skin glowed faint green in the firelight, her silver hair falling across her face. She was shivering, her arms wrapped around herself, her body thin as if she had not eaten for days. Her eyes, bright and alien, stared at him with both fear and hunger. The man stayed still, not raising his weapon. He studied her carefully. She looked young, fragile, yet something about her felt different. She did not move closer. She did not run away. She simply watched him, like a wild creature unsure whether to trust. The silence stretched. Only the fire made sound. Slowly the man reached into his pack and pulled out a blanket, worn, patched, but warm. He held it in his hands, showing it to her without speaking. His gesture was simple, but the meaning was clear. The girl's eyes widened, her lips parted, but no words came out. She took one cautious step forward, then another. The firelight painted her face fully now, and he saw how beautiful she was, even in her weakness. Her skin shimmered faintly with glowing patterns, markings that seemed alive under the night sky. He placed the blanket on the ground near the fire and leaned back, giving her space. She hesitated, her glowing eyes flicking between him and the blanket. Finally, with trembling hands, she reached down and pulled it around her shoulders. For the first time, a sound escaped her lips, a soft whisper in a language he did not understand. It sounded like thanks, though broken and unsure. The man watched, surprised. He had expected fear, maybe even hostility, but instead she drew closer to the fire, sitting carefully on the ground, her eyes never leaving him. For a moment, their worlds were silent again, connected only by firelight. The man wondered who she was, why she was alone in this cold wilderness, and why her people had left her behind. Questions filled his mind, but he did not ask yet. He simply let the fire burn and let her warm herself. He had given her only a blanket, but he had no idea how much that small act was about to change his life. The fire crackled between them, throwing sparks into the night air. Daniel sat on one side, his rifle resting across his knees, while the alien girl remained wrapped tightly in the blanket he had given her. Her glowing skin dimmed and brightened softly, as if her body itself breathed with the desert wind. She sat very still, her wide eyes locked on him. Daniel shifted uncomfortably under her stare. He had offered food, even water, and she had taken them in silence. But her expression carried something strange, not just hunger or fear, something deeper. Finally she spoke, her voice trembling in broken human words. "Why, you help?" Daniel raised his brows. He hadn't expected her to try his language. "Because you needed it," he said simply. Her head tilted slightly, her silver hair falling across her face. "No one. Help. Never." The words struck him harder than he wanted to admit. He saw it in her eyes. The memory of long years, not just hours in the desert. She was not surprised by cruelty. She was surprised by kindness. Daniel tossed her another strip of dried food. She caught it, then stared at it for several long moments before eating. When she finished, she lowered her head and pressed her forehead to the ground before him. Daniel stiffened. "What are you doing?" Her voice came out soft, almost like a prayer. "Honor. Gift. Bond." He frowned, his hand tightening on the rifle. "Bond?" She lifted her head, eyes glowing faintly. "You give warmth. Fire. Blanket. You give life." Her words were clumsy, but her meaning was sharp. Daniel blinked, caught off guard. A blanket and food. That was all he had given. To her, it meant survival. More than that, it meant trust. But what she did next unsettled him even more. She touched her palm to her chest, where her markings pulsed faintly, then extended the same hand toward him across the fire. Her fingers glowed softly, light rippling along her skin like living fire. Daniel hesitated. In all his travels he had seen handshakes, oaths, blood bonds across cultures. But this was different. This was intimate. Dangerous even. "What does that mean?" he asked cautiously. She searched for the words, then said, "I share my light. To you. Now. Your light. With me." Daniel's throat tightened. He wasn't sure if it was ritual, instinct, or something deeper. But he slowly extended his hand across the flames. Her glowing fingers brushed his skin, and for a moment he felt warmth. Not just heat, but a pulse, as if something alive had reached through her touch. His breath caught. The fire flickered higher, sparks twisting into strange shapes above them, spiraling like stars. Then, just as quickly, it was gone. The sparks fell back to ash. Solari's eyes dimmed again, but she held his gaze. "Now." We linked. Daniel leaned back slowly, still shaken. He had offered only a blanket, but what she had given in return felt far greater, almost binding. For the first time that night, he realized this girl was not just another survivor in the desert. She was something more, something dangerous, something fragile, and something unforgettable. The desert had gone quiet again. Only the faint hiss of the fire filled the air. Daniel sat cross-legged, his rifle beside him, watching the alien girl across the flames. Her name, Solari, lingered in his thoughts. She was still wrapped in the blanket, but her glowing eyes were not on the fire anymore. They were on him. Steady. Searching. Daniel finally spoke. "Why did they leave you out here?" His voice was calm, but sharp with curiosity. Solari's gaze faltered. Her markings dimmed, pulsing weakly as though echoing her feelings. At first she said nothing. The silence stretched so long that Daniel thought she would refuse to answer. But then she whispered, her words broken. "I am broken." Daniel frowned. "Broken?" She nodded slowly, lowering her head. "My legs. Weak. Since child. I cannot run, cannot fight. To my people. That is shame." Her voice cracked on the last word. She drew the blanket tighter, as if trying to hide from her own memories. Daniel's jaw tightened. He had seen soldiers crippled in battle, seen survivors claw through horrors with only their will, but never had he heard weakness spoken like a crime. Solari lifted her eyes again. In the flicker of firelight, he saw pain carved deep inside them. "Father is barren,"
strong, proud. To him, I am curse, not daughter. Daniel froze. Your father left you? She gave a small nod, her glowing hair falling forward. He said, no use. Dead weight. Better desert take me. The words hit harder than any weapon. Daniel stared at her silent, as his hands curled into fists. The thought of a father casting away his own child made his chest burn with quiet rage. But Solari wasn't finished. She raised her thin hands, her glowing markings flickering like a dying flame. I tried. I learned. I fixed machines. I studied histories. I wanted to show him. Her voice shook, but she forced the words out. Every day I begged him, see me. But his eyes never looked. Her head dropped, tears sliding down her glowing cheeks, catching the firelight like shards of glass. Daniel leaned forward, his voice firm. Solari, listen. You are not broken. He is blind. He couldn't see what you are. She looked up sharply, her eyes wide. No one had ever spoken to her like that. Daniel's tone softened, but his words carried weight. Strength isn't just running or fighting. Sometimes it's surviving. Sometimes it's standing, even when the world wants you to fall. You've done that. That's strength. Solari's breath caught. For the first time, her markings brightened, not in fear, but in hope. A fragile light, but real. The silence that followed was different from before. It wasn't empty. It was full of something unspoken between them. But just as the fire grew warm again, a low mechanical hum stirred across the dunes. Solari's eyes widened. Her glow flickered with fear. They come, she whispered. Daniel turned his head toward the darkness, his hand tightening on the rifle. He didn't know what waited out there, but he knew one thing. Whatever hunted her would now have to go through him. The fire had burned down to glowing coals, but Daniel did not let sleep take him. He sat with his rifle across his knees, eyes scanning the dunes. The desert was too dangerous for trust, yet his gaze often drifted to the alien girl huddled across the fire. Solari, as she had named herself, was silent. The blanket wrapped around her thin frame made her look smaller, more fragile. But Daniel had already seen the sharp intelligence in her eyes. She was watching him too, carefully, as if measuring every movement. At last, Daniel broke the silence. Why were you out here alone? Solari lowered her head. She struggled with the words, her voice halting and broken. Cast out. Not strong. Not wanted. Her markings dimmed as she spoke, flickering like fading light. Daniel felt something twist in his chest. He had seen cruelty on many worlds, but to hear her say it so plainly made the desert feel colder. You don't look weak to me, he said quietly. She lifted her gaze, startled by the words. For a moment her eyes shone brighter, as if his simple statement had reached deeper than he intended. The silence stretched again. Daniel tossed a small piece of dried food across the fire. Solari caught it clumsily, then stared at him before eating. When she finished, she did something that left him uneasy. She touched her hand to her chest, then placed it against the ground between them. He frowned. What does that mean? She hesitated, then tried in broken human words. Bond. Trust. Daniel raised an eyebrow. Bond? With me? She nodded once, her expression serious. Her glowing markings pulsed faintly, as if echoing her words. Daniel leaned back against the rock. He hadn't asked for this. He was just a traveler, surviving another harsh world. Yet in her eyes he saw something raw, someone desperate not for power, but for a place to belong. The fire cracked, throwing sparks into, the air. Solari extended her hand toward them. The sparks didn't fall back as they should. Instead, they drifted upward in a slow spiral, bending gently as though obeying her will. Daniel stiffened, his rifle instinctively shifting. What was that? Solari looked at him with a hint of fear. Gift, she whispered. Dangerous. Hide it. Father says, curse. Her voice shook on the last word, but her eyes begged him not to turn away. Daniel stared at her for a long moment, then lowered his rifle. Your father is wrong. Solari blinked, shocked. She had heard those words only once in her life, inside her own mind, never from another. Her markings glowed brighter, hope flickering alive in her chest. Daniel leaned forward, his voice steady. If it keeps you alive, it's not a curse. It's strength. Don't let anyone tell you different. The wind howled across the dunes, carrying with it the faint sound of engines far away. Solari froze, her body tense. Danger was coming. But when she looked at Daniel, still calm and unshaken, she felt something she had never felt before. Not fear. A bond. The desert no longer felt empty. The stillness was heavy, as if the land itself was holding its breath. Daniel knew the signs. Silence like this always meant danger. Solari sat wrapped in the blanket, close to the fading fire. Her glowing markings pulsed faintly, like a lantern struggling against the night. Her gaze was fixed on the horizon, her body tense. She whispered in her broken words, They come. Daniel shifted his rifle into his hands. Who? Her voice cracked, full of dread. Hunters. My people. They follow. Me. Daniel's eyes narrowed. Your own people sent hunters for you. She nodded slowly, her glowing hair catching the faint light of the fire. My father's will. I was cast out. Now they finish it. The truth sank heavy between them. This wasn't just a girl abandoned in the desert. This was someone her own kind wanted erased. Daniel rose to his feet, his silhouette sharp against the firelight. Then they'll have to get through me first. Solari looked at him with disbelief. All her life people had turned away from her. No one had ever stood between her and danger. Yet this stranger, this human, chose to risk himself. Her chest tightened with something new, something she had never felt. Hope mixed with fear. Then it began. From the dunes came the sound of engines, low and growling. Red lights appeared in the darkness, glowing like eyes. The hunters crested the ridge, tall figures in armor, their weapons humming with deadly energy. They moved with precision, their shadows stretching long across the sand. Solari's breath quickened. Too many. They will kill you. Daniel's grip on his rifle tightened, his voice steady. Not without a fight. The hunters advanced. Their leader raised a weapon that glowed brighter than the rest. He shouted in alien tongue, the words sharp and cold. Though Daniel didn't understand, Solari translated softly. He says, Surrender the girl, she belongs to the Baron. Her voice broke. She shook her head, tears burning her glowing eyes. I am not his, not any more. Daniel stepped in front of her chair, his body shielding her. She belongs to no one, he said, his tone like steel. The hunters closed in, their weapons buzzing louder. The air grew thick with the smell of heat and metal. Solari felt her body tremble. She wanted to scream, to hide, to run, but her legs were useless. The fire inside her chest, the one she had always buried, began to stir. The hunters raised their weapons in unison. Daniel steadied his aim, ready to fight until his last breath. And then, something inside Solari broke free. Her glowing markings brightened suddenly, pulsing faster, stronger. Sparks leapt from the fire as if pulled toward her. The hunters hesitated, their weapons flickering with static. Daniel glanced back at her, eyes widening. "Solari, what are you doing?" Her answer came not in words, but in light. The hunters had come to erase her. But what they found instead was something her father had feared all along. Power hidden behind weakness, strength born from survival. And for the first time, Solari no longer felt like prey.
The night exploded with noise. From beyond the dunes, lights flashed red, and the hum of alien engines filled the air. Solari gripped the blanket tighter around herself, her whole body shaking. Daniel stood tall in front of her, his rifle raised, his eyes sharp as steel. The hunters came quickly, tall armored figures with glowing visors, moving in perfect formation. Their weapons glowed with deadly energy, lighting the desert like lightning. Daniel's jaw tightened. He knew he could not face them all, but he stood his ground anyway. "Stay behind me," he said firmly, never looking back. Solari's voice cracked. "No. They will kill you. They always win." But Daniel did not move. "Then they'll have to go through me first." The words struck her like fire in the chest. All her life no one had ever stood for her. Not her family, not her people. No one. And now this human, who had met her only hours ago, chose to face death for her. Tears blurred her glowing eyes. Her body trembled, but not from fear this time. From something buried deep, something she had always been forced to hide. The hunters raised their weapons. Solari closed her eyes. Her hands slipped free of the blanket, glowing brighter than ever before. At first, Daniel thought it was the firelight, but then the air itself began to hum, as if answering her. The sand around her shifted, rising in small swirls. The hunters paused for half a heartbeat, confused. Then Solari screamed. Light burst from her body, her glowing markings blazing like stars. The hunters' weapons sparked, their energy cores flickering wildly. One dropped his gun, the metal twisting and locking as if seized by invisible hands. Another staggered back, his visor flashing error codes in alien script. Daniel turned in shock. Solari stood taller now, her face fierce, her hands glowing like fire. The air vibrated with her will, unseen threads, pulling at the machines around them. The hunters tried to fire, but their weapons jammed, circuits burning out. Sparks flew, smoke rising. Solari's eyes burned with bright green light, and with a sweep of her hands, the drones above them spun out of control, crashing into the dunes like falling stars. Daniel lowered his rifle slowly, awe in his eyes. Solari gasped, her body shaking from the effort, but she didn't stop. Her voice rang out, strong and defiant. "I am not weak!" The hunters froze, their armor failing, their machines shutting down around them. They looked at her with something she had never seen before in their eyes. Not pity, not hatred, but fear. Daniel stepped closer to her, steadying her as her knees threatened to give way. "Solari." His voice was low, almost reverent. "You're not what they said you are. You're more powerful than all of them." Her glowing light dimmed slightly, as exhaustion caught her, but her eyes held steady. For the first time, she believed his words. The hunters retreated into the darkness, dragging their broken machines with them. The desert fell silent again, but it was a different silence. This time, Solari did not feel abandoned. She felt alive. She felt strong. And Daniel, still holding her steady, whispered the truth she had always needed to hear. "They were wrong about you. All of them." The desert wind calmed after the hunters fled. Only the soft crackle of the dying fire remained, its glow faint against the endless night. Daniel stood beside Solari, his rifle hanging loosely at his side. He had faced battles before, but never anything like this. Solari was still trembling, but not from fear. Her body was drained. The glow in her markings dimmed to a soft pulse, like a heart beating after a storm. Daniel gently steadied her shoulders, lowering her back into the blanket. "You saved us," he said quietly. She shook her head weakly. "No. You gave me the fire. You gave me the courage." Daniel crouched in front of her, meeting her tired but determined eyes. "Courage was already there, Solari. You just needed to see it." For a moment, her lips curved into the faintest smile. The words sank into her like water into dry ground. She had been told all her life she was broken. But now, here in the desert, she had turned fear into strength. Above them, the stars spread wide and endless. Solari tilted her head back, staring at the vast sky. Her voice was soft, almost a whisper. "All my life, I wanted warmth. Not from suns, not from fire, but from someone who saw me, truly saw me." Daniel didn't answer at once. Instead, he reached for the blanket and pulled it tighter around her shoulders. The same blanket he had offered hours ago, when she was only a frightened stranger. Now it was more than fabric. It was a promise that she was not alone anymore. "You have it now," he said firmly. "You'll never face the cold alone again." The silence that followed was not empty. It was full of trust, of hope, of something unspoken between them. But far in the distance, the faint glow of engines rose again on the horizon. The Baron would not stop so easily. His wrath would stretch across worlds if it had to. Solari noticed it too. Instead of fear, her glowing eyes hardened, with resolve. "He will come," she whispered. "My father will not forgive this." Daniel nodded, his face calm, steady as stone. "Then let him come. This time, he'll find you're not the helpless girl he threw away." She breathed deeply, strength returning to her voice. "No. This time, he will see me for what I am." Her hands, faintly glowing again, clenched into fists. "Not his weakness, not his shame. I am more." Daniel gave her a rare smile, small but filled with pride. "That's the truth. And together, we'll make him see it." The desert stretched endlessly before them, harsh and cruel. Yet for the first time, Solari did not see it as a grave. She saw it as the place where her new life began. The girl who had been abandoned was no longer just a survivor. She was a fighter. She was a force. And it had all started with one small act. A human offering a blanket to an alien girl under the cold stars.